The woodcutter was the original owner of the cabin that the fair maiden and I were staying currently. He built it himself, slowly, little by little, through several stages as a hobby when the instrumentalist left for the monastery. He had known the instrumentalist since he was a baby. At the time, the young boy grew up thinking that the woodcutter was the instrumentalist's father. When the instrumentalist's mother told him that he actually wasn't, he felt confused and asked who actually was. His mother showed him a hand-drawn picture of his actual father riding a horse. She told him that he died in a war defending the kingdom. She was hopeful at first when the news revealed him to only be missing. She expected that maybe he had been hiding from the enemies, but after a few years the war was already over and his body was never found, so everyone just assumed that he had died. Maybe he had drowned in a river. Nobody really knew. The instrumentalist's father never met his son. The mother was still pregnant at the time. She had been living with the woodcutter ever since her own parents died when she was a teenager. The woodcutter didn't talk much. He was always quiet whenever he came in the cabin. The one thing that he enjoyed was playing his fiddle that he carved himself. The woodcutter was the one who taught the instrumentalist his first instrument before the musician went to the monastery. The woodcutter never sang it. It was always the mother, at least when she knew the lyrics. Sometimes the woodcutter would play a tune that the mother never heard, so she just hummed or made up some words as they went along. The instrumentalist would always knew this was the case, since the woodcutter would always laugh at the randomness of the mother. It was a while before the instrumentalist figured out that his mother and the woodcutter couldn't speak the same language. The instrumentalist was better at speaking the language her mother spoke, because that was also the language his friend spoke. But the instrumentalist also got to learn and understood the woodcutter's language as well, mostly by learning the actual lyrics, the songs that his mother used to hum. All the songs that the mother didn't know were from where the woodcutter was originally, wherever that was. Coincidentally, the instrumentalist would meet another person who spoke the woodcutter's language later in his life when he got to the monastery. A weird place, they had a rule which didn't really allow music being played with string instruments there, so the musician started to play the flute. He still wanted to play the fiddle, but the only time he could do that was at night, way out in the woods, so that he didn't wake up the whole monastery and got himself caught. He had been playing the fiddle this way for a fortnight until one night when a group of girls who had snuck out to watch a shadow puppet performance heard him play. Most of them were afraid, so quickly ran to the female section of the monastery, but one of them was curious. Normally, when you hear weird noises in the forest, you don't check it out. That was what one of the characters of the shadow puppet performance they had watched said, which influenced the group of girls to follow the shadow's example, except for one of them, the teenage girl who would eventually be the singer of the duet with the instrumentalist. It just so happened that she knew the song that he was playing. The other girls were scared, not only because he was playing songs in the middle of the forest, but because it was in foreign language. It sounded similar to the language that the enemies the kingdom fought a war against sounded. From their point of view, the song could have been a ritual for a sacrifice of some sort. The singer approached the sound, and the fiddle being strummed, as she sang along to the tune. She ignored the group of girls when they called out her name. She was adamant to find out who was the one singing the songs from her childhood. She hadn't heard the tune in years, but there was no mistake that it was the songs that she had listened to before she came to the monastery. She hadn't met a single person there who could speak the language she grew up with ever since she got separated with her family. She could speak both her native language and the language the locals spoke fluently. The same, but over the years, her fluency in her native language had gone rusty due to not using it much anymore. When she saw the instrumentalist ending the song they would later rename the oldest recorded song, she talked to him in her native language, a language she hadn't spoken in years. The instrumentalist just stood there, looking at the singer, not uttering a word. It took a while for him to register her presence and replying back to her in a language that he was only used to using while playing his fiddle. He asked what she was doing out in the woods this late at night, and the singer replied by saying she could ask him that exact same question. The instrumentalist, who didn't expect someone to find him playing the music there, much less someone who knew the songs he was playing, asked the singer if she wanted to perform music together with him. The singer obliged, but commented that They couldn't just do their practice sessions in the middle of woods like this. Luckily, the instrumentalist knew an empty cabin the woodcutter kept vacant. The woodcutter always kept it locked, but gave the instrumentalist access to it, and that would be the place that they would have their rehearsals every night. That was basically the story how the Duet was formed. They would later get the tavern that they frequent to hire them as the closing act during the late night performances, where they both met the fair maiden. It was at this point the fair maiden chose to stay at the cabin, where she could have some peace of mind rather than being kept confined in a monastery where she had to memorize some scriptures every day. At least that was what the Duet told her of their daily activities in the day, and in any case, this story will continue at a later time.